So I'm glad to be here. I'm in Hyogo, near Osaka and Kyoto in Japan. So I would like to talk to you and participate in this wonderful Art Science Monthly before going to my bed. Yeah, I have been introduced. I work as a postdoc at Waseda University, research and practice dance and choreography. I'm glad to be, my practice and work entangle with topics related with emergence involving environmental and ecological issues. My main interest is with choreography, but also as a member of art collective mapped to the closest address. We investigate our relationships with non-human beings as research-based. Our collective is organized by 4 people and 1 cat. The collective is a transoceanic collaboration between a visual artist, a light sound designer, a choreographer, theater maker, and a 1 cat, who have been playing around with performance art since 2018. We collaborate each work with local people, artists, or scientists in each work. Since I met my collaborator Alex in New York by chance, the collective is organized by 2 Colombians and 2 Japanese. Now Alex and Katarina live in Berlin, and Mahal and I live here in Hyogo. In the past, our work has taken the form of lecture performances, somatic workshops, other social practices, and so on. We are mostly occupied with the cultural differences in human approach to the environment, and we are engaged in understanding the agency of the non-human. For example, when we first met, we looked on Google Maps for the coordinates of our homes, Tokyo, Quito, Bogota, and looked up routes from one to the other. Alex wrote, "This is no direct flight nor boat that goes from one place to the other," in the proposal. Of course, there's no trail either in the map. The name map to the closest address came from the first approach we took to copying with our disparate locations. We then looked for the distance from both those places to New York, which is where we first met. So mapped is also a way to refer to our nomadism, and we sketch as our geographical practice, including non-human perspective and micro movement. We like to its indeterminacy and emergence, the suggestion of proximity, and the fact that we don't have one center from where everything moves, but several home bases. We are lucky in that sense. When the lockdown started last year in Berlin, our collective was preparing for an art residency in Tokyo. Although the residency has been postponed, we planned to do the digital residency called Open Forest Launch, and looked for the method to transcend our different time zones, because there is a 8-hour time difference between Berlin and Japan. Anyway, we established a conversation way using this distance in the condition of space and time differences. We decided to use fax. It is not hoax, it's a fax. This technology is almost obsolete, these things, but we sometimes continue to use it to communicate with each other in workplace in Japan. We were interested in exploring the time delay and the waiting time it implies. It is not an efficient way of communicating, and we are excited about the pace it would impose it on us. Of course, it didn't work or worked with even more disturbances that we had expected. We were not rigorous with the experiment and got anxious about the need to produce something in the end. Again, our collective members are separated, but we maintain 2 gardens in 2 distant geographical locations. Mahal and I live and work in Japan, where we share a rooftop garden with my father. Catalina Fernandez and Alex Viteri joined a community garden group in Germany. So in the residency, Berlin team enter into the forest near the community garden, and the Japanese team research around the Koto area in Tokyo. For our project, we communicate only via fax while adding media to our digital archive. We decided to use an open source tool called Twine and experiment with a non-linear narrative. These decisions correspond to our interest in investigating alternative modes of collaboration and the sharing of knowledge. These initial explorations informed and nourish our strategies and methodologies to understand the world of non-human perspective, such as that of plants, creatures, mushrooms, and bacteria, and translate their actions into our notions of choreography. For example, we archived the Berlin and Japanese ecosystems in Twine. These are our observations, but we can also translate our cultural political landscapes. The Twine is sharing our process, and we created a digital archive that follows a rhizomatic structure, something like the body of an octopus with its many legs and pods. We also include texts that make up our theoretical framework, material that resonate in a new way in the current context. For example, it's a corona pandemic. This project is ongoing, and we did the residency this year, again, between Berlin and Kyoto. These are in the slideshow. So relating these collective works, my recent curiosity is about distributing choreography for participants and other species. As a choreographer, I focus on the choreographic participative practices to make a relational approach. The relationships between the distributing choreography and movement had led to other discipline and collective creation. But how can distributed choreography affect movement with everyday contingency and uncertainty? We will watch the teaching dance to plants about 3 minutes. So in some works, teaching dance to plants in 2020 and dancing with chicken in 2022, 2021. This research explores the emotion of clumsy-seeming movement, failure of imitating by imitating other species. These enactments come from the human perspective. Also, distributed choreography to plants and animals make a very different slow movement and energy. By paying attention to such choreographic practices, my interest is challenging to the choreographer's relational approach and present the process of how to make a movement with these affections in the collective creation. This idea provides an essential foundation for discussing the presence and absence of choreographer and the expansion of choreography from the dancing body to non-human movement. So recently I collaborated with the choreographer Uniform Sharp. We held a one-day online choreographic workshop titled In Between Practice. She and I explored the ways the participants on dance scores connected to their own visual affective experience of space to develop remote digital relationships and test alternative forms of collaboration. During the workshop, the choreographer gave participants instructions focused on the representation of inanimate objects or non-human plant and animal behavior among participants in Tokyo and Kyoto. These enactments are imitated by different species and they happen to perform the same behaviors. Participant movements were mixed digitally with those from different culture and environment spaces as a digital embodiment of performer togetherness. I found that participants explored digital dance together through their own improvisational dance scores. Through one screen, their performance developed a particular mimetic practice without human awareness of digital media. The workshop explored the notion of participation through a virtual medium. The awareness of a non-human perspective was reflected as a dialogue in motion between digital media, the human body, and inanimate objects. In this workshop, I learned this digital togetherness allowed for a radical virtual closeness of bodies and objects. These research and collaborative work don't end with those questions. Our collective is selected as one of the art festival in Japan this year. It is postponed because of the corona pandemic. I don't know when it held, but to be continued. Here, I want to stop my presentation and I would like to hand over to you and I hope to enjoy it. Thank you so much.